This looks familiar, don't it? What up? This is I from askivesolar, where I like to keep solar simple and no need to complicate it. This is the Sevkums 240 watt portable power station. I always wanted one of these. If you know anything about my early journey into solar, I bought the Bodens. I have a video about that. You can check it out up here. And this reminds me of an Energizer portable power station that's still out there, by the way, that I considered, but my budget didn't allow for me to jump up in that capacity. It had a couple more features, but I went with the Bodens. It is a basic power station, probably one of the more cheaper ones. It has 2 AC outlets. This inverter is rated to 200 watts, which is fine. You don't really need 300 watts. I barely actually use any power station up to its full capacity. I typically will burn like about 35, 65, maybe 100 watts, not a whole lot. I'll run a lamp from this. It's very easy to grab. I love the form factor because the footprint is very small. 200 watt inverter. A screen that doesn't show much useful information other than that it's on, and it has one of those 5-bar things, just like the Bodens, just like the Ctechi. 2 buttons, power, light. It's relatively simple. It has one 45 watt rated bidirectional PD port. It also has a bunch of 5521 ports, one that is for charging and the others are for using with your various DC devices. They say the USB-C port is rated at 45 watts, but what I have discovered is that if you charge it via that port, it charges from 60 watts. I also need to test to see if it actually outputs in 60 watts. Let's see if I could figure that out right here. So here is the device. I'm using my fancy cable. This is charging this one, and it's charging it at, you can see for yourself, 60 watts. You could tell that it's charging this because this thing is going up and this one is not. And then you can see on my fancy little cable, 61 watts. So even though this thing is rated at 45 watts, it charges at 60 watts and it's putting out 60 watts, which is pretty cool. It also includes a 5521 to 12 volt adapter, which is cool. It's part of the reason why it has such a small form factor, because it doesn't have all of that stuff built in. 1 USB quick charge port, 2 regular USB charge ports, and then it has this nice diffused light on the side. One thing I like about the light is that it just turns on and then it turns off. It is a warm color. It's not a cool blue. It's a warm yellow. And also you press and hold the button to get to the blinking action, which I assume is SOS. I don't know. Little handle for carrying it, fan on the back, some legs, bumpers on the bottom, along with your details on the bottom. I don't know how they get 240 watt hours of battery in these small devices. You compare that to something like the GoLabs R300. It has a lot more stuff in it, but look at how big it is comparatively, right? It's pretty sizable device difference. But again, it has all the stuff in there. It does not dual charge. That's kind of a bummer. I tried it various ways. If you're charging through one, the other one doesn't work for charging, but it does work for using power out. The AC adapter is rated to put in about 45 watts of power. That's about how much you'll get from solar, probably a little bit more, going up to 60. But the numbers are also documented as it relates to how much solar input it can take in. It takes in about 18 to 24 volts and at about 3 amps. So if you do your math, you'll typically end up having about 56 watts, 57 watts. 5521 is typically rated at about 60 watts of solar input. So I expect that that's what you can expect from this output port. Some implications of this thing being 240 watt hours, it's only like 60 watt hours away from something that has 300 watt hours in it. And you even have some devices that, even though they have a 300 watt inverter, they don't have 300 watt hour batteries in them. They'll have like a 288 or a 293 in the Jackery 300, right? So having such capable power in such a small form factor is always impressive to me, because this device can pretty much match up with any other device that I have that's in the 300 watt hour capacity range, right? It's not like the original Bodens, which is only 166. You don't get that full capacity from any device anyway, but I like this because it has surprised me for how long it lasts comparatively. It's not as short, but in a small form factor, it gives you good power output. I really enjoy that. A couple of things that kind of caught my eye about this particular device is, one, I don't like the fan. The fan is a little bit on the loud side. It's a little bit on the harsher sounding side for a fan, but it's fine. But when I heard it, I was like, you listen to it and tell me what you think. Nothing crazy, but just check it out.
So it's not bad, but you know, it's not as smooth.
Honestly, the fan is the real only gripe that I have with this machine. It's kind of hard to have a problem with something like this, which is so small, has such a specific kind of use case. It's about $150, $170 if it's on sale. You think about that in contrast to like a Go Labs, which can be as cheap as like $200. But keep in mind the form factor of this. If somebody needed to go and travel light, or is backpacking, or whatever, you go into the wherever you go and you wanted something that was kind of capable in its watt hour capacity, but not as big of a device to bring around, then I think this is a good option. It's all about what you need it for. I want to show it to you compared to the Ctechi, which is an extremely similar device. This is the Ctechi, 240 watt hours, 240 watt hours. Look at the size difference. You know, it has a slightly bigger profile. It's a little thinner, a little taller, but this is the same thing. It's a good little device depending on what you need to use it for. This price range is very comparable as well. So what would you use something like this? Does a case use come to mind? I imagine it would be ideal for kids for charging up tablets and phones, something to have in a car in the case of an emergency. If you remember my Rock Pals video, I talked about how I wanted to use that Rock Pals as a standalone thing without a power station. But if I needed to grab a power station, it would either be the Sevkums or the Ctechi because they're very small. I can put them in the car without having a problem, compared to something like this, the Go Labs, which is a bit bulky. I kind of want to go as light as possible. That's what I see these little portable power stations being useful for. They wouldn't necessarily serve as a good primary device. Depending on your needs, maybe they would, but they would serve as a good secondary. You have something a little bigger, you power dump into this at 60 watts. I think it's a good time. Let me know what you think down in the comments. It is Holla.